Hello, this is Joseph Jensen again. I'm a minister, ordained minister through the ULC Church, Universal Life Church, since June 19th, 2019. I want to talk to you a little bit more about the DNA. A man just died back in June, I think it was June the 20th, 2019. As far as I'm concerned, he's almost in the same class as David, the writer of Psalms was. David wrote in Psalms 139 rather, that he knew everything about us. He said, "Where can I go from the Lord? Even if I went to the farthest parts of the sea, lo, the God will be there." He said he's placed his hands on top of us, around us. He knows every thought. He knew us from the time we were conceived. But he couldn't put his finger on it where God lived. But there was another man that just died last June of 2019 rather, named Dr. Eugene Hammer. Now, Dr. Hammer right now, he did a good job. He was convinced there was a God gene that was common to all genes, to all human beings inside our DNA. And he died. He knows the answer now, and he's living in DNA of his family. He's a molecular scientist that's born in 1939. He died at 72 years old. No doubt he spent 50 years of that with one thought, trying to prove God exists inside DNA. He's convinced God lived inside cDNA. Now God has told me. How do you think I found out about Dr. Hammer? God told me where to look, to research. Now, I mentioned these other stories when I went to Iraq. And I found the Garden of Eden. That was over a 2-second discussion of a guy getting on, when a guy got on an elevator. I got back on to find out what the deal was, and I ended up in Iraq. You can't tell me God's not talking to us and making things happen all the time. So I did my own research. And it led me to Dr. Hammond. Does not the Bible, the Torah, say, "Seek and ye shall find"? God will give you the answers. He'll lead you to the answers. And if nothing else, you can't prove that anything I'm saying is wrong. I would debate anybody. Every video I'm making right now, or have made on YouTube right now, or in the past, has not had any teleprompters. It's never been edited. It is what it is, mistakes and all. When I'm talking to you from my own resources, my own brain, my own thing. God's inside here talking through me, as far as I'm concerned. I know, like Dr. Hammond right now knows the truth, because when he died, he found out. Now, unless we start believing in something other than just what people tell us and get some facts about the things, we can go on believing people can be the monks. The Dalai Lama is a smart man, but to be reincarnated into a bird, a butterfly, I don't think so. But to have his ancestors living in him, I think he knows for a fact. He knows for a fact that his ancient ancestors are talking to him constantly. How do you think he's learning so much? Consider this. If everything in this world that we have seemingly have built, we got smart enough to build it, the pyramids or anything like that, like I brought up before, or anything. Did we do that? Or was that God and our ancestors? God manipulates people to come together with thought, think tanks, to create bigger and better things for the future. When the Wright brothers got together and started thinking, who was with them? God had to be with them. Their ancestors possibly had something to do with it. Even if they didn't know anything about flying, they could have been thinking about it. The point of the matter is, for Dr. Gene Hammer, he is now floating around his children, his own offspring. He can't go into somebody else's offspring, I don't think, because there's a new faction with this. I'm carrying on with, I'm saying Dr. Hammer was not wrong at all. He couldn't find a God gene, a gene that was common to all living beings, human beings, or even all beings altogether. Living beings. That includes plants, animals, trees, insects. He couldn't find one gene like that, so he couldn't prove his point. Now, what God told me, Dr. Gene Hammer, he tried his best to find out, and he was a molecular scientist. God told me, who was an autistic person and still is, that God is not inside anybody's genes in their DNA. God is the pathway that DNA follows in all living beings. Like music follows a structure, a musical structure. We put it out with notes. We draw lines and put notes on it. It's kind of like the pathway, the radio wave, whatever. It's a pathway that all DNA has to follow. Consider this whole universe is in some kind of pathway that holds it together and keeps us from flying apart. It all flows in some type of order. Black matter takes up 70% of all our universe. 20% of that universe is black energy. When I say black energy, I'm talking about a vacuum. That's vacuum. And space has a vacuum. It sucks you right into the darkness. 5%, only 5% of the universe is light. Oh my God. Does that not tell you something? 5%, less than 5% really, is light. But it's not just light. It's gravity. It's centrifugal force. It's the things. Why does a bubble can maintain its shape? Why does a cell in the body maintain its shape? That bubble itself is a mystery. How that surface tension holds everything together. They can't really explain it. But it's like, how can they explain it? But I can explain it real simply. Dr. Gene was very close, like David, to finding out the truth. He knows the truth now because he's dead, but he's with God. Thank God. And I'm here to tell you that when I die, I'm pretty sure I know exactly where I'm going to end up. With God. And I'll be in my children's and my children's children's DNA. I won't be in somebody else's DNA. I won't be traveling becoming a bird or a deer or a sheep, a horse, a unicorn. No. The Dalai Lama knows this, but he can't say any different than what they've been taught, because all religions have to stick to what they brainwash the people to. It's just like as simple as that. I told you about Muhammad. No doubt the Muslims know this, what David wrote, Because no Muslim, every Muslim that prays to Allah will tell you in a heartbeat, God knows every thought. You can't have a dirty thought in your mind if you're a true Muslim. You know that. It's sinful to drink alcohol. It's sinful to have a dirty thought. It's like you got a full knowledge that God is all around them. And some of them might have the knowledge that God is within them. I don't doubt it. I'm not the first to figure this out, but I'm the first to claim it. You know why I'm the first to claim it? It's not because others don't know about it. It's because other ones don't want the attention, because the attention is not exactly going to be safe to bring out. Why? Because among other things, when God starts talking to you and leading you to the truth, then you find out things like I mentioned with Noah. Why were they left out of the Bible, the Torah? Why was a whole race of people, the Iraqis, not talked about in the Bible when they were the descendants of Noah? Why didn't anybody figure out about the Shem and his family and the people in the first world before the flood? They were Horites. Now, what a Horite actually was, actually people that decided to breed between themselves. Okay? They didn't want anybody else to be there. There's one difference. Horites were priests. They taught during that time. But the people weren't Horites. The people on the earth back then, they weren't Horites. They were more like the Sumerians. Back then it was called Sumer. Sumers and Sumerians, the Horites believed in all daughters had to bear the sons of their children. And it didn't matter how many times or who, they weren't married, they just had their children. This is what happened with the Shemites. I'm going to say it right out. Basically, the Shemites were Jews. Same as you say the Semites, and the true word ought to be Shemites. If you know and you read a little bit about the Jews, you'll find out that they like to keep it in the family. Now, they might have figured out a little bit of order and put a little bit of time between themselves to keep first and second cousins from being there, putting a little bit of order in there, but they were still Shemites. They didn't like anybody outside the family getting intermixing with them. They still don't. That's tradition with them. That's still called a Horite. Anybody else that wasn't a Horite was still on earth, and they were the examples, the poor examples, I want to say, of teaching the people, the Sumerian people. It was any woman was good to go with. You didn't have to be married. You just go with them. Having babies was the most important thing. This is what the worst world did. There was just so much of that going on. Now there's, I'm going to say there's evidence to prove this. Only when I finally get to talk to Iraqis and find out from them firsthand through the writings of Noah that what the first world was like, because I don't want to, I don't want to speculate. I want proof. I always want proof. I'm always hunting the proof. That's why I'm talking to you today. I've been researching since back when they had the Apple 386 computers. I'm not a computer genius. I can't even type. But by God, I've been questioning things all my life, and that's why I think God put me in this position. He knew what I was going to be, and it wasn't just him. It was him and my ancestors. And the reason why I know they're there is because we know where our ancestors are. They are genes. They flow inside the DNA. They're physically, you can see our genes, our ancestors within us. But you won't find any gene that's common to all living beings or all human beings. Why? Because God's not there. God is the pattern, the traveling, how do you say, like the music, you know, the waves. DNA follows the wave, the structure that holds all DNA together and flows through. That is God. That's how come he can knows what's going on with you. He knows what's going on with her. He knows what's going on. He knows everything because he's right there. He's in constant communication with all life, all the time. Because he's in the pattern of DNA. I think Dr. Eugene Hammer, his official name was Eugene in the thing, but the thing about it is, I think it's a lot of respect for me to pick up where he left off. And he wasn't wrong. I'm telling you, he wasn't wrong. About the genes, he had a clue that when we die, we would go into the genes. That's obvious. We can see that day being passed on in DNA. But he didn't finger point the fact that God was the pattern. Like I said, there's another pattern that holds the universe together. There's patterns all over the place that God had set out. No doubt when he put out the light in the midst of the darkness, it's kind of like hope for us. And it also probably pisses off the darkness. If the darkness is truly evil, it's out there. It's really annoying. It got to be annoying to look at stars light when it wants to be completely dark. I mentioned it too about the ANI and darkness, the void. That's void. There's nothing there. There is no light. There's nothing. The people that have abortions, and like the Chinese, they can destroy God because even that journey wave, that wave that holds our DNA together, it ends with the baby, with the infant being killed. Every time we kill another life, that journey, that future of all DNA ends right there. But at least any person that's lived any time has some DNA being passed on, that they will in the future be able to be in that DNA. But an abortion, it never had a chance to live in anybody's DNA. Therefore, God died. I told you God needed help in the last video. My God, yeah. That's what the whole thing's all about. That's why I became a minister. Now, whether I'm right or wrong, it shouldn't matter. Because if I'm right, I say God has no hands. He has no feet. He has no mouth. Well, and I say that he's not responsible because he can't stop us with our free will. But if we do not use our hands, our feet, our mouths for God, without this message, we are apt to lose this whole world and God because we stood by and let them scream, let them holler, let them beat us, stone us, burn our cities, crush us, crush God. They could have been promiscuous sex, homosexuality, lesbians. All kinds of things have prevented everybody, sidetracked people from having children. The children are actually taught to want to change their sex so they can't have children. Now, if that's not a big misconception and not figured out you can't tell me if you are one of these people, it's not rocket science. that if you don't have children, you have nothing to live for. You're going to live for the moment, but when you die, you die. You die just like you do, like the abortion. You're going to be in the darkness. There's nothing for you to live in. But the difference between an abortion and you is you was given a chance. The abortion wasn't. For you women that are going to have abortions or have to have hysterectomies and things like that, my God, today they need to be harvesting the eggs and protecting those eggs. And even if you want to be a homosexual, a lesbian, and never have sex with a man or have a child, by all means, go have your eggs harvested and allow somebody else to raise those children. That's very important for mankind to live on, God to live on. I mentioned in the last video that Satan, evil, does not have to eat. It does not have to sleep. It doesn't feel pain. It thrives off of our pain. It doesn't want us around. It doesn't want us to walk around like a dog and we have to clean up behind a dog. Have to feed us. So if you're following that kind of stuff, you are so brainwashed. You can't understand that you are bringing about not only your own destruction, but the world's destruction. What would the world be like? The ones that don't want to have glass inside the buildings. Well, let me give you a clue. You can put us all in tombs. But even Hollywood learned how to make sugar glass and stuff like that. You can still see out of it. I don't care what you do. We can figure ways to stay safe. But by God, don't put us inside a concrete tomb before we die. That doesn't make sense. And furthermore, everybody that's walking around with their mouths wide open, always yapping, they're gods. They're wannabe gods. They're screaming and hollering that they want to be gods. But if they're doing that, they are your gods. If you're listening to them, people need to stay to themselves because everybody has their own journey with God from birth, from conception. God will lead you into everything you want to do if they didn't already put it in your head to become it, because they're constantly talking to you. Now consider this too. I mentioned in the beginning. Has everything in this world that you could see, which is the basic meaning of light, anything seen is light. Everything seen, who built it? Come on. I talked about the pyramids. I talked about the Mars rover. These things were created not just by us. They haven't been done with our hands, our feet, our mouths. But who's teaching us? Do you think we learned all this in school? No. School's only a support for what we already know. It's a communicating factor that we have to learn so to talk to each other. You know, we learn our ABCs. We learn the simple math, even advanced math. But we don't necessarily learn all that in school. How many people like Albert Einstein or the Rain Man could do mathematical formulas and never be taught nothing, just from their own knowledge, in their own heads? Oh my God, we got so much we're not paying attention to. The stories that came to me about Muhammad, they came to me out of the blue. I could care less about Muhammad or terrorists at one point. It was God that was crying every time somebody said something, and I could feel him crying and letting me know what the truth was about Muhammad. I got out my books and I started researching it. And the more and more I researched, the more and more, I found out. And everything I researched the next week, it was out. It was put out. It was deleted. It was covered up. Even my videos were done that way. My name's Joseph Jensen. You know how many Joseph Jensens there was 2 days after I put out this first message? They had 12 people. There was only 2 of us starting out with, then it turned out to 12 3 days later. So when I changed it to Joseph Andrew Jensen, Sr., wow, that's a little bit hard for them to cover up when you go to punch it in YouTube. Their next step's going to be throwing me off the air completely for what I say. I got to talk to the Dalai Lama face to face and ask him. Try to get him to tell me how you're going to become a bird. But I can understand, he'll understand when I say, you're not all the way wrong. You have your ancestors talking to you all the time. The Muslims have their ancestors talking to them all the time. When they pray and they meditate for hours and hours on end, who are they listening to? They're listening to God, Allah, and their ancestors. When these people that live way up there, up north, and they're in the woods, not necessarily with these groups that are up there now, because obviously they're being sidetracked their own self because they have electric skill saws up there and life below zero. You know, everybody seems to have a snowmobile. I might wonder. First question I got is, where's the gas stations? Come on, where are they getting electricity? I know there's solar, but that country there, it's got almost 24 hours darkness at one point. The winters are long. They got very short summers. Getting off all that, I don't want to get on to all that. I'm trying to mention about the DNA. If we understand that DNA is, our genes are going to be in the DNA and passed on to our children. Our DNA, with art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, God. Yes, we're going to be in that floating journey. We all have our own journey. If you go to my website, it's kind of hard to get to and figure out. But I'm sure over time it's going to be on. I'm hoping my website, my billboard, my name's all over every billboard in the United States, on the radio and TV set. Not for my own proud being. I don't care about that. I don't even make friends on YouTube, on Facebook and stuff. I'm not a man. A people's man. Okay, I am a people's man because when I want to know you, I want to take an interest in you. I'll stick by you and try to learn everything I can from you. But I don't need nothing but that. What I guess I'm easily to fall in love with people. I fall in love with families I married into. I fall in love with people throughout my life. It's easily for me to care about everybody. It's not that I don't want to get close to everybody. I don't want anybody sidetracking me. I like when somebody. Sometimes I want to talk so much. I talk the ears off of my friends. I drive them crazy. I tell them, I won't stop talking. I can drive my own children crazy. It's because I like a second. How do you say, somebody else to start working on the same thoughts and tell me if I'm right or wrong. That's basically what I'm doing right now. Tell me whether I'm right or wrong. I'm asking people, as rabbis, scientists, priests, everybody, prove me wrong. Because I know, especially in today's world, like with the data collection and everything that's going on, there's good politicians in the government, but they can't be good. Why? Because they've been compromised. If they haven't been compromised for real, they know they can be compromised so easily. They're in a threatening thing. There's something like almost being like blackmailed. They can't think on their own because they've gone beyond digging up dirt on people to just making up dirt on people. Now it's like critical for anybody in government to just get along and keep up with with whatever agenda these people that are liars and cheaters and thieves want us to do. Are we ready to hand over this world to them? I would venture to say that over 99% of everybody in government is compromised. They have to think twice about their vote. Not only this world. The other thing is, when they give people the money, I'm not against welfare. I'm not against food stamps. But if that's the only reason you vote for somebody, so you don't lose a dime out of your own pocket, you gotta kind of like think things over. God give us all dreams. He can give us dreams and hopes to break out of ways. Even somebody says they're stuck in the city, they've been stuck for generations. Well, by God give you feet. Go someplace else. I know the people, I feel bad for the people in Calcutta. But that's the place. And I know that they're going to starve to death, laying there in the worst conditions. But the time that they spent lying there feeling sorry for themselves, I would have been struggling to get someplace else. You know, this guy Bear, that the survivalist that can survive anywhere. We can turn into that if we had to. We can turn into these people that live off the grid if we had to. But yet, we can make them live off the grid. We can make them live as survivors simply by voting the right way. The way God would have you to vote. If you think they're crooked, why when this government started turning obviously wacky, and making stupid choices, why did everybody not see that there was things being put in their agendas? And I'm talking about global warming. Global warming was the only thing that the whole world could come together and get a tax out of everybody, the poorest of poorest people, because you're breathing their air, that they could tax them just for breathing. And that was the way that they were going to get by and be able to tax them, because not every country runs on automobiles where they can tax on the highways, gasoline. You know, it's like, it's obvious that they needed one way to get this money. Now, I know the ICE does have problems up north by watching these pictures and stuff. But the world's been changing for millions of years. Remember I told you, one day is to 1,000 years to the Lord, 360,000 years between each day, times 6. Yeah, do the math. It's been around a million or 2 years, right? But the thing about it is, I'm not going to sit here and try to prove everything. I want everybody to prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. If you can't prove me wrong, that's a good indication that it could be right. I'll know in 30 years whether I'm right. Dr. Eugene Hammer right now knows the truth. Would I ever get to find out whether the Iraqis, talk to the Iraqis and find out what they know? They have the written works of Methuselah. Whenever the ark was on there, Methuselah didn't go with him, 969 years old. He gave Noah all the stuff that he had. Books, scrolls, letters from Adam and Eve on up. He had everything. And they would have put it on the ark with everything else. I mean, they wouldn't left a paperclip behind that, I doubt. You know what I'm saying? A spoon, a knife, a fork, a plate. A napkin. You know, it's like, take it with you, you know? Everybody knows that. When they're moving out the first time, they're going to take everything. But his sons didn't carry that. Those three sons that messed up basically was the Jewish religion, which I'm not going to put it down to Jews. Because why won't I put down the Jews? Why won't I put down the Muslims? Why won't I put that? Because there's gods inside them. They have to understand that because God's inside them, we all are special. I'm not special. You're special. They're special. Everybody's special. Treat each other as we are special, and not as special needs putting us on the yellow bus. But by God, if we are on the yellow bus, by God, you better be helping us too. Don't put us down. Treat us halfway decent. This is what I'm saying. This world has to understand what they've been doing. Following humans, making up everything but the truth to keep us from finding the truth. They will cover you up. What you say today in the internet, they will cover you up the moment you say it with something else on top of it, till that can't even be found if you're not looking for it deeply. I know I found things. I had to go back hundreds of things before I ever found what I found originally, the original article. But then they got past the point of even burying it, and they got to just deleting it. Oh, Facebook's good for that. So's Twitter. Oh, they're all in it together. They're being run. People like the Chinese that kill children, only allow one child. They're dealing with God now. You're not just dealing with human life, you're dealing with God. They are not allowing people to expand, so that in other words, that they can only live through one person's DNA. And if that person's DNA is captured down to one, it'll always just be one instead of going everywhere. So because it can't branch out, they are limiting God and destroying God in his path. Yeah, they're doing more than just killing life. They're killing their own future. They're killing the future of everybody that listens to them, and they're killing God. Consider it. You say you don't care. Well, you would care if you when you get on your deathbed. There's no atheists in a foxhole. I've been to 2 different wars. I didn't fight in Vietnam, but I was in the service during the Vietnam War. I mentioned what happened to my brother. And my brother has a reasoning. The same reason I did for hating God for so many years. I hated God 47 years, from the time I was 20 years old to the time I was 67. Till God finally said, please, Joe, please, please, please. I don't have hands. I don't have feet. I don't have a mouth. You guys have free choice. I have to bear with your parents, with your ancestors. We have to bear to hear the screams, to watch this stuff happen. We can't say anything. If you don't even say stop. Yet these guys run around with machetes in our streets. What's this world? And we're not just talking about the United States. We're talking about every country. I'll tell you first off, I mentioned this too. There's no bully in this world that's a real man. I mean, no, I won't say that. There are some that will stand toe to toe with you with no weapons that are tough. But the majority of them are spineless cowards. Did you ever turn the mind of one of those strong men, or even one of those cowards, around for God? You got to test the person that could testify, not just the people, but their own children, what they used to be, and what God did for them and their ancestors. You know, mom in the background, I didn't raise you to do that. Dad, laughing. Every time you get in a fight and stuff, he says, that's my boy. You know, it's kind of like, you know what they're doing. It's obvious your parents are talking to you all the time. Of course, they're in your DNA. And they are as much alive as God is. God can hear you. He can see you. But he stands by to hear the screams, to watch the horrible torturing of children and infants, the destruction of mankind, even justified in war. How can we justify any war? I don't care what war we're talking about. There is no justified war. Go back and find a good reason why we fought any war or killed it in the thing. Because our enemies, if we had to live right next door to them and stuff like that, or live with them, like in service together, we become friends. We're all alike. I got just 2 books out. Michael II and the Torchmaster. Oh, they say a lot, but I've learned a lot more since those books. But I can't just go back and edit this stuff into my books about the DNA and stuff. But you know what I'm talking about now. So what I'm going to try to tell you, God's inspired me to get up. I was in my scrubs. That's what I sleep in my scrubs, hospital scrubs. And I was there in my bed, ready to go to sleep. And then God says, no, you give me these thoughts to get up here and start talking. No notes. But he put Dr.Eugene Hammer on my mind. And I looked it up. I got my iPad sitting on the chair right in front of me. And not reading it, it's blank. But it was looking up Dr. Eugene Hammer. And God wants you to know, he would let me know, to tell you, he's with him. And he knows the truth. And he's happy. Because God's also shown him this. That I'm trying to continue his work. Not as a molecular scientist. Not as a well-known scientist. It's going to spend years. I'm an idiot, I guess you would say. That I would go out there and just immediately talk and say something off the top of my brain without even rehearsing it. That's what I do. I don't need to come back and edit because I won't edit. Because I believe every word I say is appointed by God. I'm talking by God. I didn't have to think about it. I'm just talking. How do you think Peter in the Bible, which I don't want to talk about Christianity because you can't involve Christianity when you're talking about God. That's the problem with Islam has with Christianity. Christianity claims Jesus Christ is God as well as God. It clearly says in the beginning that God, in the Ten Commandments, God will have no other gods before him. Jesus himself said that too. He says, it's not me, it's about the Father. But we put Jesus Christ higher than God. I'm a Christian. I was baptized with the Holy Ghost. I pray all the time in tongues. What is tongues? Tongue is God's language. It's not to be interpreted. It's never been supposed to be interpreted. It's not supposed to be prayed for the fascination of others. It's a language between you and God because God already knows what you're going to pray for. He says, I know what not to pray for except by the Spirit of God. But it's a language, too, that when I'm speaking, God knows my heart. It's not something that ever needs to be announced to even my ancestors or my parents that are deceased floating around in heaven. It's not something that needs to be heard by the congregation or figured out by them. It's personal. It's between me and God. Now, if I put my own words in there, then I'm not trying to outthink God. I'm saying, well, what I say, and that's exactly what Paul did. He said, I'd rather speak one word I know than 10,000 words in barbarian. Let's be on barbarian. That's thinking about himself, like he was God. Believe me, when I leave you this message, I've done my job. It's in God's hands then. He's inside you. He'll back up what I say. He'll start changing your own life. I've done my job. I don't have to be a shepherd. God only wants people to stand up for him. Let them know that God would not allow this world be thrown down the tubes by a bunch of squalling, squealing, loudmouth, spoiled children that want to have their way. The greasy wheel, there's a cure for the greasy wheel. It's called oil, WD-40. It's time for us to put some WD-40 on. Not literally, but to get rid of the squeaky wheel. It's squeaked long enough. What I'm telling you is common sense. And there's got to be some truth to it to all of you. And I don't have to say no more because God's going to take over after that. And he's going to start putting that in your head. And he's going to start working on you like he worked on me all my life. Coincidence after coincidence after coincidence in my life. My God, I've had so many coincidences. One of my best friends, Tom. We were in the service together. We've been together for 47 years. He was from North Carolina. I was from California. Now I'm living in South Carolina. It's 75 miles from his house in South Carolina. He's in North Carolina. Now he's been living in California for almost 40 years of that. 47 years I've known him. And he's getting where he hates it, and he's thinking about coming back home. He wouldn't have done that years ago because he hated North Carolina. He thought we were just a bunch of ignorant hicks. Now he's finding out in California, it's a bunch of stupid nuts. It's getting so ridiculous that he's trying to run out of there, but he's got his children there. He's got everybody there. They're kind of like. But again, everybody's got legs. God give us all legs. We can go. We can get away from this stuff and find some sanity. Find some time with you and God, away from people. Listen to your people at night. They're talking to you. They're talking to you all the time. Who do you think's telling us how to build this stuff? Create this stuff. Get out of bed in the morning. That's not just us. What we call instincts is God and our ancestors and our parents if they're deceased. Coaching us, urging us, teaching us. But they can't hug us. They can't kiss us. They ain't got a mouth. And they can't run after us. That's what they're trying to let you know. They know that now. They see where they went wrong, but that doesn't mean God doesn't love them. God loves every human being. I said something too in my first video. If a Hell's Angel, wearing his colors, proudly, after I talked to them, coming out of a bar and in a bar, he wore a badge saying, God's in me. That would mean more to me than a lot of things. You know why? Because he's making a statement. He's making a statement that he's been alone all his life. He thought he was alone all his life. But he knows the circumstances of his life. He knows he shouldn't be alive, but he is alive. Or she. And all the junk that they put up with. Now, I could use a lot of profanity here, but because if I was talking to them, I would be using profanity because that's the only way of getting through to a lot of them. But you understand what I'm saying? And I'm not above it. I'm no goody two-shoes. In fact, I've made up tons and tons of business things. Everything. I've invested my life into a lot of things. Building greenhouses to flowers called show flowers that would rent flowers to people, to churches and things. Go change their flowers every Sunday. That would go on, put on flower displays, hospitals and everything, businesses, and change their displays around on whenever they wanted, a weekly basis, monthly basis, whatever. Fresh flowers. I would sell flowers too, but and give them the people things. But what I'm saying, it was an idea created by God. I went so far as to buying 2 truckloads of rough sawn, 2-inch wide, 2x8-inch rough cuts cypress for $800 per 1,000 board feet. About that basically was one semi-truckload with a 40-foot bed stacked 8 foot high with spaces between there because it was dried. It was drying out lumber. 2 semi-trucks loaded with kiln dried cypress. When it came back from the kilns, they didn't put it together because they still wanted the moisture content, the air to come through it. The point of the matter is, I bought the pumps, I bought the stuff I needed, everything I needed, but I never went in business. Never got that far. But that was because God put that business in my mind, and I believed in it. I didn't know back then it was God and my parents or whatever, everybody's cheering me on to do it. I had an ancestor, my great-grandfather. Oh, geez. That man invented, not a helicopter. Helicopters weren't invented there, but it was in 1903. He invented a dragonfly machine. If I'm not mistaken, it was a 90 horsepower. It could have been a 120 horsepower motor that he's talking about in 1903. It never got created. Never got finished. There's some heavy-duty thinkers in my house, too. My dad was he's a creator. He did everything. I mean, there wasn't too much he couldn't do. But he's also a clumsy man. He He hurt himself every time he turned around. I'm clumsy too. That we all are, and in my family that have a little bit of this autism kind of thing. But the point about it is that everybody is special. We all have a journey from birth. We're following, whether we realize it or not. We've been creating things and building things and built, not for us. We're building the dreams of God. We're building the dreams of your ancestors. That's why it firmly says that God is light, and light is anything seen. In the darkness, there's no night light. There's no light at all. If there is these fallen angels, these past angels, they live in the. If they're not in heaven with God, they're living in darkness. Not in the space, because space has light. They're living beyond the stars in darkness. But I don't think they're in a thing. They're in a dimension of darkness. Because the definition of darkness is the absence of light. The absence of light. They're in the complete darkness. They're hidden. You can't see them. So if there is evil in this world, you're not going to see it. It's going to be hidden. And I told you, these beings, if they do exist, they don't have to eat. They don't sleep, and they don't have no pain. And they just, it's their, how do you say, we're if anything, we're just kind of like their puppets. But physically, they can't control us. They're on the outside of light. They're in another dimension. They can't be inside us. The people that do allow these things to come inside them mentally, the hypnotic state or whatever you want to call it, they are like zombies. They are just completely ruined. The thing Legion, whatever was written about, he had 1,000 of these things talking to him at one time. He's cutting himself with rocks and stuff. And he locked himself in a cave. Go figure, if he would have gotten to the light, he might have had some help. I don't know. The answer's what I'm just saying. We got a short time to live. I got less than 30 years to go. I just turned 69. If I live to be 100, I'll live 31 years. But to tell you the truth, I don't want to live to be 101. I want to be like Dr.Eugene Hammer. I want to see the answers of my questions were true or not. My belief, what he set me out to do. At least that's what I want to believe he set me out to do. Because I'm right now in the process of writing 4 small books. Small books. I've already published 2 big books, bigger books that are too expensive. But 4 smaller books. One, about what we're talking about, the DNA. That's not in our DNA. Heaven's our DNA. Our DNA is in heaven. The pathway that we're following is like the universe. It's in a pathway. It stays in order. Everything that flows in the pathway of God has an order. It flows a certain way. You can see it. Under the microscopes, they can see it. With electronic microscopes, they discovered microwaves. They discovered radio waves. They discovered everything had a flow to it. Music. But the thing is, that's the same as with God. And that's how God stays in communication with everything at the same time. Because we're all within that band. Anyway, I'm going to write these 4 books. Small books. Nothing special. Black and white. I don't want to make paper books. I want to make a small hardback of it. I think that's doing justice. But one of them is going to be on DNA. One of them is going to be on Noah. Not just Noah. I told the story of this Lieutenant Roskovetsky or whatever. Back in 1910, the Russian pilot that discovered Noah's Ark. That story's still out there, especially in Greece. Someone in Greece has the original article written in the 1930s that was given to the daughter given to them by the daughter anonymously of one of the scientists that went aboard the Ark to measure it. But anyway, I want to write that story. I want to write Muhammad's story. And I want to write this story to expand on. Anyway, I should already started out with this one with the DNA, but you know what? I'm trying to say I'll write 3 or 4 books, small books. Those 3 and 4 books that I got to write, of course I got to write the one about Muhammad in Arabic and Farsi, in Indonesian. I got to reach all the Muslim nations with the truth of Muhammad. And it really needs to be read by, it's got to be first in English, because everybody needs to understand what's really going on. They really have to understand. This world was created and had no idea of anything about the stars, the dates, the years, the timing. Enoch somehow got a lot of information, the son of Cain. And he's the first Horite. And Enoch became the high priest in those days. They don't even know if Enoch ever had any children or not. They don't know nothing about it. They just say he was transcended to heaven. That's a good explanation, right? How do you just say somebody disappeared? They do that stuff all the time in the Bible. They don't give you the answers. They just simply, boop, he's dead, he's gone. He's there for 1 second, he's gone the next. No, I don't accept that. I don't accept the fact that the Jews were the only people on this earth during that time, because the earth was so many people on this earth. There wasn't even Jews there, because Jews were Shem's, after Shem's children, as Horites. Adam and Eve had multiple children through Adam through multiple wives. I explain all that, okay? But there was a lot of people during the time before the flood. And there was a lot of people it took after the flood, because that Tower of Babel didn't build itself with a few people. It took 331 years, according to God, and what He's told me and showed me through my own figuring what's right and wrong. The calendars, all calendars of the ancient times and everything are always 360 years. How do they know about 360 days a year? 360 gods. 12 Arabic tribes, 12 months of the year. 4 seasons. 30, 90 days, 90 days, 90 days. You know? A month, 30 days. You know, it's like, how in the world did these people have this knowledge? And I always thought it was because of angels. But God's not telling me it's about angels. He's telling us because God is capable of giving us the knowledge to do anything When we put the space shuttles in the air, we thought that was great. Well, when we put the Mars rover on Mars, that's going places, okay? That's really getting there. We're outdoing ourselves every day, but it's only because God is getting through to more and more people through what? The same technology. But this technology is, some people want us to run our lives like Bill Gates. They want to run our lives. As far as I'm concerned, he's a complete idiot. I can't lose nothing by him because I don't have nothing. He can sue me all he wants. I don't care. If I went to jail for it, it wouldn't make no difference. Since I started naming names, I'll name a couple more. Gandhi, as smart as he was. Oh, a leader. Very smart man. He led a whole nation. But he made a comment that was so stupid. He says, I don't know there is a God. I never seen God, nor ever I talked to God, but I'll always be looking for God. I heard the same things come from Michael Savage, a doctor, was a Jew, a Russian Jew. Family purpose. Say the same thing. Well, because they physically can't see it, he can't exist. Well, Dr. Savage, is there anything that exists that you can't see? Maybe something inside your body, like your heart, unless you've been cut open? Maybe like the DNA you never looked for? Under the magnifying glass? You better be a botanist and looked at a lot of plants. But have you ever looked for DNA? And if you didn't find that gene like Dr. Gene Hammer, because you wasn't looking for it, you was looking for something out of a botanist was looking after you, it didn't concern you. You wouldn't find God anyway, because you wasn't looking for him. But if you're looking for him, consider the patterns of all things. Microwaves, electricity. You know, it travels two different directions in AC, one direction in AC. Everything's contained in a pathway. If you're looking for it, you'll find the answers. So don't make a statement like that, like it's an open-ended situation. Like I never found it. It couldn't possibly be. That's kind of like the statement Gandhi said. You can't do that just because you're not looking for it. I think I've said enough in this video. But when I was talking about those books, when I do get these small books out, printed out, as cheap as I can, I will have to get them to everybody in this world and this person's languages. And they won't just be published in the United States. They'll be published in every country by everybody's language. 77 different languages was the core. But the word, as far as I'm concerned, the rest of my life I'm going to spend not just talking to y'all. Not just talking to y'all. But getting it out to the people that haven't heard. I can spend the rest of my life until I end up with God, just like Dr. Eugene Hammer. And I think, in fact, I know he's right there with God, and he's got his answer. Was exactly what he thought it was. But he was real close. He didn't get the right answer, the whole answer. He's not in the genes. He's in the journey, the pathway. David found that out too. David's right up there too. Their search is over. My search is just beginning. I'll keep questioning. I'll keep thinking. I'm going to quit, but I quit blaming God. And since God told me that, I became a minister because I've been a butthole for 47 years, blaming God for everything. Like my brother. You can't do it. We had the choices, we made it. And when you guys talk about realism, reality, let me tell you something. Reality says I could be talking to you right now, or I could shut up. I could stand up, or I could sit down. I could get up, and I could do anything. Reality is is whatever choice you made. So there really is no such thing as reality. Reality is what we make of it, which way we go, whichever thing. And the moment we get up and go one way, we could turn back around and go back the other way. So reality can change in a split second. So there can't be really no such thing as reality. Reality, there is no such thing as... The reality is the story of what happened. Nobody can change what happened. We can't go back in the past and wish anything changes in our past either. Unless we changed. If it was any different, somebody wouldn't have been born. Somebody wouldn't have been left behind. It has tremendous consequences to all life if anything changes. So you don't even think about what you wish you were. What you wish you were, if you still got a chance, is you wish you live long enough to straighten your mess out. Long enough, live a little bit longer so that you can kind of change your life around and start making it make sense. Start talking to God instead of your neighbor. Start talking to God instead of on the phone. As far as my mother goes and stuff, I mentioned that before. She might urge me to get to bed, but I'll say, okay, Mom, I made the bed. No hospital corners. Not like you wanted it, but it's made up, so back off. But the rest of the day, I'm talking to God. And in my case, I'm talking to God in tongues. Because my parents don't need to know what's the conversation is. My dad, my ancestors, nobody else needs to know that thing, and it can't be interpreted. That is our personal, very personal thing. That's our discussion between me and God. And would I put a word of my words in between those? No. No, I would not. Why would I? Because then I'm thinking about what I'm saying? No. Then God's words aren't good enough for me. All those people that are brainwashed to believe in something like that, a gift like that, it can be manipulated. It was given to you for a purpose. When somebody has asked you to pray for them, yeah, you pray for them in tongues. You pray for them in tongues. You know why? Not everybody needs to know what they're praying about. But God knows what you're praying for. You're praying for that person. Those people talking about the people in India, they're God men. Spending a whole life letting their faces deform, their bodies deform. But they actually pray and intercess for people to God. Are they wrong? Are they hypocrites? No, they're not hypocrites. They found their one useful way to be useful. They sat there and they intercede for God. Easy job. Sit there and deform yourself over a century of people sitting there on, not a century, but a lifetime, spending their lifetime sitting in one position. But people ask them for their prayers. When the Buddhist monks spin their prayer wheels, and they light their incense, and they take time to meditate. Man's told them who they're praying to and what they're praying for. But man is totally off the charts and wrong. These people have devoted their lives to praying to what they believe is somebody that was listening. And there's only one person listening. There's only one person, well, their ancestors are listening too. But those are the only people listening. Their ancestors and God. That's kind of a good thing to be intercessing about the people. The American Indians the same way. They've been saying for years, this is a spiritual world. Well, they know what God, they know where God's at. They know where their ancestors are at. They're not wrong. It might be considered wrong if they take and use peyote or drink a lot to get their spiritual high on. But I wouldn't want to be the judge of them. I like beer too. So this idea is everybody needs to start talking to each other in a real way, bring up the real conversation, quit being cowards, and talk to God, and start telling your story. Not just telling your story, live your story. Like I'm doing. The rest of my life, I'll print these little 3 or 4 more little books. And the rest of my life, I'm going to just do what the God men do in India. I'm going to go around, talking to people. I'm not going to be sitting around. I'm going to be flying around, traveling around, driving around the world the rest of my life. Not just giving out books, but still getting answers and telling people what I'm telling you now. And I'm learning things every day. God's not stopping here. When I hear more, he'll tell me I'll make more videos. But we have all got a orchestrated life to live. Whether we know it or not, everything we've been doing already has been created by them. That's why things have been so great. The carvings, the things, the talents, everything goes hand in hand. It's all not because anything aliens. It's our own ancestors and God teaching us, giving us the talents. There's not saying in the Bible that God gives you talents so you can bury it. You know? He'll give it to somebody else that'll use it. Okay, I'm going to go. And forgive me if there are those that get me off on Christianity. I am a Christian. I'm a Pentecostalist. But I'm out to reach all religions of every sort, because God abides in every one of us. Whatever we've been taught, whatever we've been told, anything else has been taught by man. Man's influence. Man's screwed up need for power, for vengeance, for, I don't know, whatever they do this stuff for. Countries and governments and people do. They want to be on the stage. They want to make themselves the God, your God. Come on, people. We don't need no gods to follow. There is no gods. I followed Jesus Christ after I learned about Jesus Christ. For those who want to learn about Jesus Christ, they only have to ask. They ask God. Ask Jesus Christ. Not Jesus Christ. I'm not going to say Jesus Christ is God no more, because it still doesn't make sense to me either. Because it is a legitimate claim that the Islams and Buddhists, Hare Krishnas in India, it's one of the biggest religions in thing. But the Krishnas, seems like Krishna if you put the words of Krishna and the words of Jesus right side by side, it'd be almost identical. Ironically, if you put the names of Buddha and Jesus Christ side by side, it's almost identical. How? What? How? Well, they made up one claim. The first time they claimed this was through Constantine in the Catholic Church. It wasn't in the Torah. It was written in the Bible during Constantine's time. And Constantine's the one that said the Blessed Trinity, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. He is God. And that goes against the Ten Commandments. That's a legitimate claim. Because the legitimate claim says, thou shalt not have any gods before me. Now, that doesn't mean you can have that there can't be a God after God. Maybe we're talking about Jesus Christ then. Because he said there shall not have any gods before me. So we can't place anything above God, no matter who you are. But if Krishna actually was Jesus Christ, if Buddha actually was talking about Jesus Christ in their own way, who's to say that they're wrong? I do know one thing. The word Allah is God. Us Americans, we use the word God. Us English people from England and English people, we use the word God. But Allah is the Arabic word for God. The first time I mentioned that book, God's name, Allah, was spoken, was the day that Muhammad, being led into Mecca by 1,000 soldiers, was paraded in front. He was supposed to be taken to Mecca to recant God, recant Allah, and go back to the original 360 gods of Islam. But when they got there, that 1,000 soldiers and the general found out there was 36,000 Meccans saying, praise be to Allah, it's Muhammad. It was those Meccans that had months before taken back Mecca, made up their minds to take back Mecca. 36,000. And it's that day that the 36,000 Meccans came together and they said, praise be to Allah, we follow Allah. We are not Islams. Now, you will call us Muslims. There's a difference now, you see. What is a Muslim? It's one of the Meccans that said that freed Allah. I mean, they believed in Allah, they prayed to Allah, and they forbid anyone to live that would claim to be Islamic. Where did the Islams go? They were in Medina. In Medina. 9,000 of them stayed back in Medina, where they found Muhammad. And there they went on crusades to recruit. They went on crusades to recruit by going into households, raping the wife, killing the children, raping the women, and taking the sons and the husbands from the homes and forcing them into becoming the soldiers. That's the way they recruited. That's what they tried to do with Iraq. That's on that last tape. The 3 daughters that were raped, kidnapped, and then married to Islamic leaders, guess what they're called? Shiites. Most of the Shiite religion is in Iran. And they're really proud to be Shiites. the point that they would fight. But you know what they're fighting over? Because they are direct descendants by bloodline to Muhammad. By what? Rape? Kidnapping? Forcing it into marriage? That's a great way to be remembered, huh? I'm proud of myself and my ancestors, huh? When every one of them is just trying to hold up that it's got to be 360, because that 360 is a magical number. It's got to be 360 gods. There has to be 300. The other religions, like the Egyptians, they said, "The heck with your 360. We can make up our own gods. You can't tell us who these 360 gods are. We're going to make up our own." And I suppose that happened all over the world with everybody's religion. They just made up their own gods. The Romans, heck, they had a 5-day star calendar. I think 4 of which are after Roman gods. You know? I know Sunday was after the sun. Monday was after the moon. But you got Venus, Jupiter, Mars. You know? These things were all Roman gods. Everybody had their own thing. Anything but God. There couldn't be one God. That's what Muhammad was told, died for. He never even got the word. He didn't get to preach. He never got to be up in the mosque and singing out prayers. My God, every time he did, he lost a family member. He lost his 3 sons the day he first tried to preach. And beside that, they cut off their heads in front of Muhammad, so that he'd keep his mouth shut. It was the Meccans that finally saw Muhammad know what he'd been through. By just saying the word Allah, they were scared to death. For 2 years, until finally they captured Muhammad. 8 years he stayed in exile. 2 years was in Ethiopia, where he learned about Christianity. But that whole story is told. I don't need to retell that story. But the idea is that everybody needs to, at least God willing, I hope, will impress on your mind to open a book, to read a story outside of the ones the church is there. Read something that's not in the Bible that should be in the Bible. Read something that's not in the Torah that should be in the Torah. Read something in the Quran that should be in the Quran. Something that you know. Look for the things that you know should be in there, but they're not in there. Why aren't they in there? They're hiding something. The truth. Or they don't know it. It's either one or two. They claim they know something, but they don't know it because they're hiding the truth. Maybe the truth is they don't know it. Okay, I'm going to let you go. I don't know how long this is. Amazingly enough, the last 3 videos I made were all like it. One of them was 2 hours long, almost exactly. Last one was an hour and 30 minutes long, almost exactly. And the first one was like 1 hour 34 minutes, okay? I don't know how long this video is until I stop it. But I'm going to put it on YouTube just the way it is. But I am getting a little bit better at talking. I feel more confident talking, even though I didn't have a clue what I was going to talk about when I started. Well, I did know I was going to talk about Dr.Eugene Hammer. But that's a very special person that knows right now he's with God. He knows the answer. Yes, we are in the DNA. DNA is heaven. Yes, our genes are flowing through DNA. He's flowing in the DNA in God. Our Father, which art in heaven. We're going to be with God in heaven. Is that a lie? No, it's not a lie. It's not a lie. Because if God is that flowing pathway, and we're genes flowing in that pathway, and God's that pathway, holding it all perfectly together, flowing it right there. He's doing the same thing in outer space. Space has got its own order. We know that. That's how everything stays in its own orbit. Everything stays in its own little thing. And we keep on thinking it's black matter holding things together. It's black matter that's trying to separate everything. God's more than just light. He's gravity. He's the holding force, the surface force of a bubble that holds a cell together or water together. He's got centrifugal force. He's the force that throws things out, holds us to the ground. He can be like the electricity. I know I felt that a couple of times through God. Yeah. Almost feel like the same thing is shocked. A few people have felt that too. It's not just me. I wouldn't just venture to say that lots and lots of people have felt the electricity of God flowing through them. Make your hair stand up. It was kind of interesting when you go to church one time. I would go to church. It wasn't one time, but this is it. Give you an example. You almost see the mist. Almost God's Spirit like in the mist. And when it came down, even a baby couldn't cry. Nobody could even hold their eyes open or their head up. It was so heavy. You couldn't hear a pin drop. What kind of thing, what kind of power can do something like that? It's God. God is, he can, there's no telling what he can teach us. And our ancestors can teach us. The space shuttles, Mars rover, we're only babies in that stuff. We're just learning. The days of George Jetson, that's only the beginning of what we can accomplish with God. But we have to recognize that we're doing what God wants, what our ancestors want. They're the dreamers. They just give us out their dreams to build. I've been working on this house 33 years. I've been working on this house 33 years by myself. It's about complete. Not really complete, but it's complete, so I finally get my papers to live in it, certificate of occupancy. But you know what? I ain't gonna claim I did anything. God gave me the vision to start this house. He's the one that built this magnificent place. He's the one that gave me all the instructions, the dreams. I fulfilled their dreams. In fact, how many times I put this thing off to the side? I was a crane operator. I worked in 9 different states. Went to Scotland, even Iraq. Worked a lot of places. Besides what I went in the service to all these countries in the service. But you see what I'm saying? Our life is controlled. And we think we have control. Whether we believe in God or not. You're still building things. If you're building things, you're not doing it on your own. You're being told to do it. By your own ancestors and God. You're answering to God every day if you're getting up out of bed. So you people that don't want to follow God, by God, you might as well just lay down and chain yourself to the bed, because otherwise you are working for God, whether you want to or not. That's a good thought. God just gave that to me. Okay, I love you guys. I'm going to leave this. I have to leave this, and I'll be amazed when I check the time. It'll probably be something like 1 hour and 30 minutes. It might be even longer. It might be shorter, but it'll always be something that surprises me, believe me. Okay, I'm going to say good night. God bless. Always. God, I'm going to leave you. Good night.